Okay, there's another association between two species, which is also positive and negative. What is it? Predation. Good. Okay, what's the difference between these two?
Wait, but isn't it, is it flipped or no?
One they kill. The other
Yeah, it doesn't. It's more like for predation, it's prey and predator.
It doesn't necessarily mean the symbiote's smaller. That means
Right.
it's
What'd you say? What's your question?
Yeah, and sometimes they can be the same size. All right, but yeah, sorry.
No, I was just saying that in predation they kill, like they don't, and then parasitism, they like don't kill it, but they harming it. Yeah. They don't want to kill it. Good parasite doesn't want to.
Right, yeah, because if your parasite you kill it, then you can't suck the life out. Yeah, you gotta find a new host, exactly.
What's that term for like where they're a parasite but then eventually they kill it? It's like a term for that we learned in college.
Huh. I mean, there's obligate parasitism or.
I can't remember what species. It was like we read a paper on it or something. I don't know. But it was like they fed off it for a long time and then they're like babies or something, then killed it or something like that.
Oh, the parasitoid.
Oh, that's it.
Yes. So a parasitoid is kind of a type of parasitism. Usually an insect will lay its eggs in a host, and then the eggs will hatch and eat the host.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of like a bot fly, but that doesn't kill you. It's more like, a wasp will lay its eggs on a caterpillar. Caterpillar gets big and fat, and the eggs hatch and eat it a lot.
Eat the inside.
Yeah.
Is it that's what the mosquito or the cicada killer wasp does, the big ones that fly around and fight the cicadas?
Mm-hmm.
Back to their hole and they lay their eggs in them.
Nice. Yeah. So there's a number of, a lot of wasps do that as well. Yeah, we had that parasitoids as, was it, the paper we read was on agricultural
Yeah. How they're
insecticide,
using
yeah.
parasitoids to
Control.
get rid
Yeah.
of them.
Okay. Parasitism, predation. There's also pathogen. Ah. Which is generally microbial, right? And again, the line between pathogen and parasite is sometimes blurred as well. So it's like roundworms can be like a pathogen or a parasite, kind of both. But a bacteria is generally referred to as a pathogen, not a parasite. Okay, all right, we've got some other interactions. We'll just list these. Mutualism. Plus, right? They both benefit. And so some, lots of good examples of, what'd you say, sharks and?
Sharks and the fish that swim.
The remora? Yeah, so that would actually be more commensalism. Because the shark doesn't really benefit from it.
It's not like those birds that clean rhinoceroses' teeth.
Yeah, that would be like a mutualism. So the bird on the buffalo, yeah.
Didn't we read about a study of that, or was that an evolution maybe? The oxpeckers, where like they found it was more parasitic.
They were hurting the.
They were going less after the ticks and like their blood.
Oh, really?
Blood.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because that's like a classic example of mutualism, but now it's not.
Yeah, now it's like proven now.
So they would be parasites. Huh? All right. There's another one that's negative. What's that? Both are negatively affected.
There's one more you said?
Yeah, there's a couple more. Yeah.
I don't think it went this much depth in zoology.
2 negative ones. You'll be like, oh yeah, when I say it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Competition.
Oh, no.
Right, and so you can have interspecific competition where it's between two species, or you can have intraspecific competition where it's between individuals within the same species. And there's one other one, amensalism. Which is negative neutral.
Wait, so why would it even occur then? And you think like through natural selection, whatever, that wouldn't even.
Well, so a good example of this is like a pine tree will, its needles will make it an acidic environment, which will negatively affect a lot of the things that can grow there.
But is it really effective?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of positively benefited for competition, but yeah. But yeah, for some reason the presence of this species negatively affects something else that can live there, but doesn't really benefit itself. And there's one other one as well.
How is amensalism not mostly competition? If something, like there's an invasive species, right, and it's eating something that drives something else extinct.
Right, so then it'd be competition, yeah. Yeah, this one
That's what I'm like, wondering.
doesn't really happen very often, and it's hard to think of some good examples because often it'll just classify into competition. So you actually, if you've learned these before, they often just leave that one out.
Yeah.
But
I just have like a little word for everything.
yeah. Okay, so those are species interactions, okay, or symbioses. All right, habitat use. So we looked at the platypus, okay, and they were trying to determine, have a live look into a platypus burrow. And why was that so hard?
They didn't know which one were females and males.
Okay, yeah, it was hard to determine what burrows belong to females and males. And then a platypus also had multiple burrows. And then what else?
You have to find the burrow, they're like buried in hills.
Yeah, and then how could you observe it without destroying it was another problem. So
That guy.
yeah, that poor guy who had to burrow all the way into the one and there was nothing there.
Yeah, it's like,
So, all right. And then how did the platypus interact with its environment? It had a very interesting ecology with that, right?
They use electro-sensors in their bill.
Yeah,
Keep
just
their
like going
heads
crazy.
And then that way they can find what they're eating. There's little
Right.
bugs on the bottom of the.
And without their eyes or ears, right, they close their nostrils and their ears when they're diving. They only used electroreception. And there was a significant amount of insects they ate every day, right? I can't remember what it was, but it was a lot. Okay, what other disciplines within ecology were highlighted in the video? So,
The one bird that was using the platypus.
okay, yeah. So what type of interaction was that? The bird and the platypus.
Would it be commensalism? Because the bird got something, but I don't think it did anything to the platypus other than.
Right, you didn't give a platypus anything back. So yeah, that was a good commensalist interaction. Yeah, so the scientists that were studying the platypus and the burrow, they would probably characterize themselves as physiological ecologists, right? So they were trying to understand something about how the development of this little platypus baby occurred in the burrow. Trying to think what were some other things they looked at. They talked about the kangaroo and its hopping ability, which we discussed before, right? What else? It was long ago, right? We'd have to watch it again then. All right, but there were a number of different ecological examples, which were given in the video. I'll just leave it at that. Okay, these are fun, life history tables. And I tried to find a good video of some of the ways in which they get this information, but it is actually like ridiculous the amount of work that they do, especially with like something like a mammal, which is very hard to observe in nature. But essentially what they do, this is a life history table. A cohort table is similar. What's a cohort? Like the term itself, what does it mean?
C-O-H-E-R-T.
C-O-H-O-R-T. Have you heard that term before?
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
operation.
pretty sure it's what Romans call their armies.
Okay.
It's like
Someone in league with, or like?
Kind of, yeah. So it's basically a group that was enlisted all at the same time, right? So like your freshman class, sometimes referred to as your cohort, or people that you're taking all the same classes with at the same time. That's your like cohort, graduate at the same time. Yeah. In graduate school, it's some graduate schools it's more specific, like you are all in the same program at the same time, taking the same class. You'll graduate together. That's your cohort, right? So cohort tables, what they do is they look at a population. They look at all the babies that are born. They mark them somehow, and they follow them throughout their whole life until they died. So that's how they got this information. This is about Carolia perspiculata is a species of bat. There's a researcher at Auburn who did this with Columbian ground squirrels in Alberta. What you do, you would go there every spring, right before they emerged, and they emerged the same day every year. And as they emerged, they would trap them, and then they would mark them with different markings, like with some permanent paint marker. And then they would observe them for the whole summer until they went back down into their burrows to hibernate. And then the next year, they'd go out and do it again. And basically, he's been doing this for 20 years, and they know every single individual in this population. They know the ones that survived and died, and ones that got pregnant, and with whom, so they do genetic testing as well, figure out all sorts of information. But basically, you have to follow this population through at least the whole generation to understand how many are born, how many survive from one year to the next, how many reproduce.
That sounds like so much work.
Yeah, it's tons of work.
Because then you could also, if you know the genetics of all of the beginning first generation, then you take the genetics of all of the babies and you can see which ones survived, and you can also track which traits are favorable.
Yep.
A lot of good information.
Yeah, so they do a lot of evolutionary studies, behavior studies, and then they're really understanding like how the population changes over time, of course. But yeah, they've published a lot of information. One of them was, how related the individuals were, and how that then affected like how they protected each other. Like they were more likely to protect ones that they were related to than ones that they were unrelated to. How do they know that? I don't know, but I guess they grew up together. But yeah, so we're going to go over what all these variables are, but know that it takes a lot of work.
Not like in ecology?
Yeah, ecology, we have got more time for that. But that's how they have to do it, if you want to figure it out. Okay, population growth. I have a couple mammal examples here. What they did is they found this island, St. Matthew Island, which was uninhabited, or at least didn't have any caribou on it, and they put a few caribou on there, and then they just counted how many caribou were there after every year. Okay, and what happened was you have this growth rate, or this growth, where they don't have any predators, and so they experience exponential growth. Okay, and exponential growth occurs when you have unlimited resources. All right, so they didn't have any competitors. They didn't have any predators. There were no wolves on this island or bears or anything. And they were just able to roam free. But what happened after 1935 or so is they died.
All of them?
Yeah, they went extinct.
Wait, why?
Why? Well, that's a good question. Why do you think they did?
Resources got depleted? 'Cause
Yeah.
there was no predators?
Yeah, there was nothing to check their population, so they ate everything on the island. So there's no food for them left. And other things happened as well. So what do you think happens once the density got really high? So now you have all these caribou packed in on this little island. What else might happen that would reduce their population? Disease, yeah. What do you guys say? But yeah, they got a sickness that was easily transferred among all of them, and they all started to die. Eventually, they all died. Okay, so this exponential growth is always temporary, because if you keep on growing, you will run out of resources. Well, we'll see. You say unless it's humans?
Yeah, well, we haven't hit it yet.
No, and actually we aren't exponentially growing anymore. Some parts of the world maybe are, but as a whole, it should top out at like 10 billion or something, according to their projections. Yeah, I guess we'll see. Okay. The other type of growth, so there's exponential growth, but more realistic growth doesn't follow this J curve. It follows an S curve, where you have a kind of temporary period of exponential growth down here. But what happens is there is a point at which the environment can no longer sustain growth, and that is called the carrying capacity.
What is that? Is it just the S curve? Isn't there a name for that?
Yes, this is called logistic growth.
The logistic, okay. For some reason I was thinking that was the weird bridged growth.
That's geometric
Geometric, okay.
growth, yeah, which we won't talk
No,
about.
that-
Yeah. Trying to think if it would apply. Maybe with there aren't really any annual mammals. Maybe lemmings, maybe.
Like their parents die and then they
Yeah.
die after.
Yeah. It doesn't work. Close. Okay, so logistic growth. What's determining this carrying capacity then?
Amount of resources.
Yeah, resources. So you've got, habitat, preferred habitat, maybe burrows, maybe the amount of food, some sort of limiting resource or accumulation of resources going to prevent a population from overshooting this, which is what these caribou did. So their carrying capacity was probably somewhere around here. I'm just guessing. But they overshot their carrying capacity so much that they crashed afterwards. Okay. But there are some populations which, rather than staying at this carrying capacity, actually cycle. And one of the reasons is because of the predator. Okay, so they did another experiment on an island. This is called the Isle Royale. where they put a bunch of moose on this island, and then they put a bunch of wolves on this island, and they looked at how their populations fluctuated. Okay, and generally a spike in the moose population, you have a little spike here, was followed by a spike in the wolf population, which was followed by a downturn of the moose population, which is followed by a downturn in, so there's this lag between the two, but they follow each other in their cycles. So predator-prey populations can help keep below the carrying capacity, keep the population below that. Okay, there are other animals other mammals that also go through cycles, and the reasons are they don't understand exactly why. There's a few hypotheses. So lemmings, I don't have it. There's Arctic lemmings. These are generally polar mammals, a bunch of different species. But essentially, they have these spikes in their population followed by these low density and then spikes. They go through these cycles just constantly where they have this population boom. And why they go through these is hard to understand. They have identified some behaviors, like when population densities are really high, they will be more aggressive and stop reproducing. There seems to be like some intrinsic method for them to decrease their population. But then those are the cycles that the lemmings will go through.
What are they called?
Lemmings.
Lemmings.
They're really cute. They're like hamsters, really furry. But they mostly live up in Arctic regions and live underneath the snow. Owls eat them. Go through these cycles. Okay, so understanding how mammals move or disperse is another part of ecology. The gray whale is the world record holder for migrations.
Like distance-wise?
Distance, yeah. For mammals. It goes from the top of Alaska all the way down to Baja, California. Baja, Mexico. Yeah, below California. And back again, every year. So that means it goes up the west coast, then up the southern Alaska coast, basically around Alaska, and then up above it, so in the Arctic Ocean. And you can actually go in their breeding grounds in Baja. You can go and swim with them and pet them and stuff. I have a friend, well, I follow him on Instagram. I don't really know him. But he's my brother's friend. I've never met him. But anyway, he goes down there every year and swims with whales. Okay, we caught these guys, the silver-haired bats. Bats, not all of them migrate, but many of them do. The ones that migrate don't generally hibernate. The ones that hibernate don't generally migrate. So that's kind of two different strategies that they're going to use. The bowhead whale is another migrating species. So these are the two species that I have done research on. The bowhead whale migrates from the Arctic Ocean down to in between Alaska and Russia and back and forth. So not as much as the gray whale. And mule deer, do anyone know their migration patterns? They go from high to low elevation. So it's not a latitudinal distance, it's more elevation. Okay, so why?
Sorry, I was gonna ask, high elevations only in the summertime?
Yes, yeah. During the growing season, lots of things for them to eat up there, and then once it gets too cold up there, they go lower in the winter. Yeah, so why do things migrate? What's the point?
All the food.
Okay, yeah. Generally food.
So like just maybe the habitat isn't like ideal for them, so like that's why they move.
Yeah. So why? Yeah. So that's kind of the second reason is.
Gulls go back into the therefore to lay their eggs, or nurse sharks go to a specific cove to mate.
Right. So, and generally there's a disconnect between the feeding grounds and the breeding grounds, and so that's really where they're migrating between. So that's what the whales do. They eat up in the northern Arctic in the summer. They go down and breed in the warm waters of Mexico in the winter. Mule deer, same thing. They're just following the food. Where's the most abundant food for them? Bats, I don't know why. I don't know why they don't just stay down south for the summer. Maybe it's competition driven, but generally they're following food and or have a disconnect between their breeding grounds and their feeding grounds. This one, what is? Okay, we'll skip this. Convergent evolution.
Things get more.
Yes, so the similarity of traits.
Bugs with wings and birds with wings.
But they're not necessarily like, they're not related incestually. They just have similar traits due to like selection pressures.
Right, yeah, so due to their environment, right?
Yeah, like fish are streamlined and mammals are streamlined, even though they're not.
Right, right. But because they're both in the ocean, they need to have that, they have that streamlined selection. So you can see this in marsupials and eutherians, right? In Australia, comparing these to eutherian mammals. There is a flying squirrel marsupial. The sugar glider is one for sale in Lexington for $300 if you want to buy one. I have a friend that studies flying squirrels. It would actually really be cool to. I've talked to her about maybe doing something, but she's really busy, and so am I. But maybe someday. One of the cool things she does with them is she actually takes this equipment called an anabat, which measures bat signals, and she puts them up to her flying squirrels, and they also make ultrasonic sounds, and she can characterize them on the computer and stuff. But yeah, there's ungulates. You got your kangaroo and your kangaroo-like. I think that's a rabbit. I don't know exactly what a Patagonian cavy is. The Tasmanian devil and the wolverine, woodchuck, and the wombat. They fulfill the same ecological niche, but they are not related, evolutionarily speaking. So now, and we'll do this as well. We'll talk about biomes and biogeographic regions. Okay, the guy who first came up with biogeographic regions,
Is that, did we learn about him?
I think so. Alfred Wallace. Okay, and what was the Wallace line? Do you remember where that was? Yes, so, okay, they've since been altered since he has first came out with them. And they're based on a few different things. Plant life is one of the main things that they're based off of, so the flowering plants in each of the different areas. But they also roughly go with tectonic plate structure and climates and biomes. Okay, so let's skip over here. What's a biome? Okay, it's similar to a biogeographic region, but this is more determined by the climate. Okay, so these are regions with specific climates that we can actually predict based on latitude and elevation. Okay, so what are some examples of biomes? Desert, right? That's a big obvious one. So what's the characteristic of a desert?
Dry.
Okay, they have arid. They don't have very much humidity. They also don't have a lot of rain. The difference between day and night has a quite variable temperature. The difference between winter and summer can be somewhat variable, but not as variable as other biomes. Okay? What are some other biomes? Grassland, boreal forest, rainforest, tundra. For boreal forest, were you thinking taiga?
What?
Taiga? Oh, we should make this.
What do you mean, I don't think I've heard of tigers.
So taiga is like very short spruce tree forest below the tundra.
Yeah, it's the one right below the tundra.
Yeah. And what are we in?
Temperate.
Yeah, deciduous, temperate forest. Okay, and so each of these have kind of a specific rainfall you can kind of categorize. We're not going to go too much into that. But you know rainforests have lots of rain. Our deciduous temperate forest has quite a bit of rain, okay, but it also is very seasonal, whereas a rainforest is not. Just may have a wet and dry season, but not winter, spring, summer, fall. The tundra is also dry, like the desert. Actually doesn't get a lot of rainfall, but because it's winter most of the time, there's lots of water around because it freezes rather than evaporates. And they're also defined by the major plant communities found in each, right? All right, biogeographic regions then, like I said before, are defined also by their plants, but really the diversity of the plants. So the different types of plants in the different regions. And that then affects what mammalian fauna will be there as well. So the Palearctic, we'll just go to the map. The Wallace line is right here. So it separates the Australasian and the Indo-Malayan regions, biogeographic regions. Palearctic region is the biggest. The Neotropical region has the most endemic species. Okay, what's an endemic species?
Species is it a species that's carnivorous?
Yeah, so it's unique to that area, right? Not found anywhere else. Australasia has exclusively marsupials, right? Or it used to. Afrotropic is the most diverse. Antarctic is the least diverse. Which has no terrestrial land mammals. And the Oceanic has only marine mammals. Except there are some islands included in the Oceanic, right? See these islands here? What are those? That's Hawaii, yes. They have pigs, but though they're not natural to that region. There's only one terrestrial mammal group that has inhabited these oceanic islands naturally. Anyone know what it is? Birds aren't mammals, but you're close.
I was thinking.
Is it some type of
Nope.
Is there a bat on
Bats. Yeah, so you'll find bats on some of these islands. And how did it get there?
It got blown over.
Yeah, that's the theory, right? So on these you have, while we're talking, we have corridors, right? Corridors are passageways between different regions, right? So you can have corridors on many different scales. You know, a valley through the mountains can be a corridor between two other areas. A corridor that was once between Nearctic and Palearctic regions was Beringia.
I always forget that those.
Well, yeah, used to, when there was a lot more ice and the sea level was lower, then it was all land there. And so you had
You
land.
can, from like a certain point on the Alaska, you can still see that land mass, isn't that?
Well, it's sea in between the two, but there are two islands which are right next to each other.
Say Russia from
Yeah, I can see Russia from my house, yes. No, you cannot see Russia from where she lives. She lives like right here.
Have you been there?
Yeah, this is Anchorage. But yeah, there's two islands that are right next to each other. One's Russian and one's Alaskan, and they're 3 miles apart.
That's crazy.
But the actual, like, continental Russia and continental Alaska, I don't know how far apart it is, but I would say 100 miles at least.
You boat? How long would it take for you? I wonder, just like on a boat.
Yeah, I don't know. It's pretty rough seas. It's like not, wouldn't be a good Caribbean cruise or anything, but that was one of the corridors which was also restrictive, right? So if you were a tropical Indo-Malayan bat down here, how likely was it for you to use that land bridge, Beringia? None. Yeah, right. You have to be like an Arctic adapted species in order to get through there. Okay, so it's restrictive. But a corridor nonetheless. Another corridor which is formed only recently is this Panama land bridge. Okay, and because the Australia and South America were actually recently together, there are a number of marsupials found in South America. And
Maybe we'll get a cuter marsupial.
what's that?
Maybe we'll get a cuter marsupial.
Yeah, maybe. Except once this Panama land bridge was formed, you then had a lot more migration of species between the two, between the Neotropic and Nearctic, at least between South and Central America. But most of the flow has been from Central America into South America. So more species go from north to south than have come from south to north.
I don't want multiple, I just need one.
You just need one cute one. There's actually a really cute one in Mexico called the tree opossum. You don't have to go too far.
Well, find it and then we'll introduce it.
I've got one before. We could go.
Our possums.
Yeah. All right, but so these corridors are important. So the Wallace line was also a significant feature because, and Wallace, this is kind of what came up with the whole theory, was he noticed most of the species on this side of the line were more similar to Australia, while most of the species on this side of the line were more similar to the Southeast Asian. And so there's a significant barrier there to dispersal in the oceanic currents and wind patterns, weather patterns there. But that from there, he's like, oh, well, I wonder if there are other areas which are also significant barriers. And so there are, that's what these lines all line up with. What do you think this barrier is? Anyone know what geographically is right there? The Himalayas, yeah. So that's a big barrier between those two regions. What about this one over here? I think Kilimanjaro's down here a little bit, but I don't know. But that's not it.
The Sahara Desert.
The Sahara Desert. Okay. Good. I'm trying to think of any other ones. There used to be, between Europe and Asia, this used to be separated until so now we have this corridor between Europe and Asia, which didn't used to be that.
Neo-Arctic and Neotropic. Why is that one?
Yeah, that one's not as clearly defined. I mean, there are a bunch of mountains that go down like this. But I think that more has to do with just climate. Yeah, so you're going from this temperate area to tropical area.
Is that why more species in the Nearctic are going to the Neotropic and Neotropic? Because they're like it's much easier for a temperate to survive in a tropic than for a tropic to survive in a temperate.
It's actually more the tropic species in Central America are going into the tropical regions in South America. Yeah, but you're on the basic reason in that this is a smaller landmass, but it's still tropical. And now look at this large tropical landmass, lots more niches to fill. So I think that's part of it. They don't know exactly why, but that's the pattern. Okay. So looking at another thing mammalian-wise. So if we start here at the equator and we go this way, what's the pattern of diversity we find in mammals? So mammalian diversity, does it increase or decrease with? All right, yeah, so you have diversity decreasing. Even if the larger proportion of animals in the area, maybe mammals, they're generally going to be all one species, right? So caribou form herds of millions of caribou, but there aren't gazelles and zebras and the diversity that you see down in the tropics in Africa, the same type of species. Okay, let's go back. Okay, and here's our biome map. And you can see the similarities in the regions. Our Nearctic and Palearctic have kind of the same distribution of temperate forest, boreal forest / taiga, and tundra in those different areas. Now, this is a very simple biome map. You can actually dissect biomes very, very into very, very small categories if you want to. But we'll just keep it simple. Ones are cool. All right, last thing we'll talk about is islands. Okay. How do mammals get to islands?
It's close enough.
Okay. You can if they can swim and they're close enough, yeah, they could get out there.
But a lot of these people.
They float on pieces of wood.
You can fly, or there's really this sweepstakes method, right? Generally, it's probably on accident that they end up there, but once they're there, they can't really leave. And if enough of, a small population of them ends up on an island, then they can inhabit that island.
Like basically just like a hitchhiker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might float on something Well, it'd have to float on something, I guess. Out to an island. But the dispersal rate, or let's go back, the diversity of islands depends on 3 factors, okay? One is proximity to the mainland. Okay, so that's going to basically determine how many, if you're closer to the mainland, then more mammals are likely to end up there. Okay, the second one is the size of the island. Okay, a bigger island can hold more species. Okay, so if there's many different events happening where many different mammals are going to come into an area, a bigger island's going to be able to hold more and have more differences, more niches, so on. All right, and the last one is speciation. So once you're on an island, you don't have you have a unique set of circumstances where generally you don't have many competitors, unfulfilled niches, and a different selection pressure. So speciation happens more frequently or rapidly on these islands. And the best example of that is, or a great example of that is Madagascar, right? So there were 2 groups which diversified on Madagascar, which aren't really diverse anywhere else. What were those 2? Remember? Lemurs and tenrecs, yeah. And so you have a high diversity in these species on this island, and they're fulfilling niches where in the mainland are fulfilled by different other species. Right, so there's 30 different species of lemur, roughly. I don't remember how many different tenrecs, but that spiny yellow-looking hedgehog-like tenrec looked pretty cool. Another thing that happens on islands is the island syndrome. Okay, so again, because they're isolated in their selection pressure, and also because islands generally don't have as many resources as the mainland, or a diversity of them, this gives unique selection pressure to whatever mammal ended up there, and they will either generally have a dwarf or a giant morph, yeah.
So on Lopez Island in the San Juans, we have a cabin up there, and so there's a big population of deer, but they are they're on the island and inbreeding.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that all the deer there are really small compared to like what you would see on the mainland.
So you got some dwarf. Do you see the island foxes there?
I haven't seen any, but I've had some of this season.
Yeah. So I went to San Clemente. No, one of those islands off of Santa Barbara. I think it was San Clemente. Yeah. And what's that?
They're different.
Oh, San Juan. No, you.
San
That
Juan
like
and
San
in
Juan
Washington State.
Oh yeah, my bad. I was thinking. I was gonna mix.
There is
I was thinking Catalina Islands when you said San Juan. Never mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there are island foxes up there.
They get some foxes.
Yeah.
Like there's been like a